I never thought a simple swipe on Instagram could feel like being punched in the chest. But there it was, Maya's poll. Should I leave Ethan for Jordan Hayes? Her face, smiling carefree, stared back at me from my feed. I froze mid-scroll, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Thousands of people were now participating in the fate of our relationship, a public vote on something that had been private for years. My stomach churned, but I forced myself to stay calm, breathing slowly, counting each second as though I could convince reality to shift back to normal. Within minutes, the poll exploded. Thousands of votes, hundreds of comments, some teasing, some cruel, some encouraging her to do what feels right. And then came Lucas's message, subtle but blunt. Dude, you might want to check this out. He knew I didn't respond well to drama, but this wasn't something I could ignore. I opened the poll, watched the percentages tick up, felt my chest tighten as strangers judged me in real time. And there was Jordan Hayes, oblivious, probably flexing in a mirror somewhere, the unwitting catalyst of my humiliation. I realized that this was more than betrayal. It was spectacle. My personal life had been thrust into public scrutiny, and the worst part was the casualness with which Maya treated it. The images of our past 3 years, the dinners, quiet late-night talks, even our shared small routines, clashed violently with the public's commentary. I could feel anger simmering, but I refused to let it erupt. I had a choice: react impulsively or think carefully. I decided to observe first, document everything, and plan my next move methodically. Screenshots of the poll, every comment that mentioned my name, timestamps of her posts. I collected them all. While the world watched her gamble with our relationship for likes, I chose to act privately, rationally, without drama. Every click, every note I took was part of a strategy that would allow me to maintain control over my own life, instead of letting public opinion dictate my emotional response. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling while the glow of my phone cast faint shadows on the walls. The room was quiet, but inside my thoughts were anything but. 3 years of careful devotion, countless shared plans, and silent support had been reduced to a question on Instagram. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and oddly detached all at once. The calm exterior I had always prided myself on now felt like a fragile shield against the storm threatening to consume me. The memories hid in waves, her laughter in the kitchen, our debates about movies that didn't matter, small gestures of intimacy and trust. And then the image of her at the gym, smiling at Jordan Hayes, invaded those memories, leaving a bitter taste. Anger flashed, but I quickly reminded myself that reaction would only feed the chaos she so desperately seemed to crave. I realized then that my silence could become my strength, my calm a form of resistance against her spectacle. I began cataloging everything I had invested: money, time, emotional labor. Every dinner she didn't notice I planned, every errand I took without complaint, every quiet sacrifice. It all came into sharp focus. While Maya chased validation from likes and strangers, I acknowledged the value of my own stability, patience, and integrity. This wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming control over my life and decisions. I resolved not to reply to her texts to avoid confrontation, and to let her actions speak for themselves. Instead, I would observe, document, and plan quietly. My steps would be deliberate, my actions precise, ensuring that when the time came, I could act without losing control. Emotional impulsiveness would not govern me. Instead, methodical strategy and self-respect would guide every move, a quiet storm gathering strength beneath the calm surface. Chapter 3: The methodical move. The morning light seeped into the apartment, painting the walls with soft gold, but I felt none of the warmth. Maya was out, probably oblivious to the ripple her Instagram poll had caused. I walked slowly through the apartment, clipboard in hand, examining everything. My books, clothes, and all the small items that had silently accumulated over 3 years. Each item packed felt like reclaiming a fragment of my autonomy, a small act of defiance and clarity. Clara arrived as I labeled boxes and called utility companies to transfer services. "Ethan, are you really doing this quietly?" she asked, her voice mixing awe and concern. I nodded, keeping my tone neutral. This wasn't about dramatic gestures, it was about calculated action. With her calm, organized support, the overwhelming task suddenly felt manageable, even empowering. We moved efficiently, each step deliberate, no wasted energy on anger or public spectacle. Documenting my belongings, disconnecting utilities, and keeping records of every interaction became a form of control. This was no longer a story about betrayal, it was about reclaiming order in the chaos she had created. Every screenshot, every logged call, and every box packed strengthened my sense of agency, a reminder that while she sought attention, I had the power to safeguard my own life. I executed a methodical retreat from the apartment we had shared. Clara coordinated logistics, I tracked every detail, and I prepared a single note outlining my departure. No confrontation, no accusations, just deliberate action that allowed me to leave with dignity and control. By evening, the apartment reflected order amid the chaos, my independence quietly restored, a silent message that life would continue, with or without her attention. I watched from a distance as Maya returned home, her bag swinging lightly over her shoulder, unaware of what awaited her. The apartment was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of disconnected appliances. My note rested on the counter, neatly typed, explaining the departure. She paused at the door, eyes scanning the space, and then the panic set in. Her expression shifted from confusion to anger and then disbelief. "Ethan, what is this?" she stammered, voice cracking, as she realized the gravity of the situation. The poll, meant as a joke, or so she claimed, had spiraled into consequences she hadn't anticipated. The empty shelves, the turned-off lights, the absence of her carefully curated chaos, it all hit her at once. Her attempts to salvage control were immediate. She grabbed her phone, typing frantic messages, calling Jordan Hayes, her friends, even sending memes to minimize the fallout. But my silence was deafening. Each unanswered message, each ignored plea, reinforced the message that actions have consequences. She wasn't used to consequences she couldn't manipulate. I remained absent, detached, allowing her to face the fallout of her own choices. I let Clara handle forwarding necessary information to utilities and the landlord, keeping me completely removed from the chaos. This strategy allowed me to maintain emotional control while she wrestled with embarrassment, both in private and increasingly, in public online. My calm contrasted sharply with her escalating panic, illustrating the power of patience and calculated action. Within hours, the poll story had exploded across platforms. Sienna Frost, a mutual influencer friend of Maya, posted a cryptic story, tagging friends with laughing emojis. Vivian Cross slid into Maya's DMs, pressuring her to explain and justify herself. The digital world had amplified the situation far beyond our apartment walls. Each notification from Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok was a new wave of judgment. Comments mocked her impulsiveness, questioned her integrity, and speculated on the gym guy. Even mutual friends chimed in, carefully or not so carefully, making it impossible for her to spin the narrative. Likes and shares became weapons, each one a silent judgment she couldn't escape. I watched quietly from my new perspective, seeing how her carefully curated online persona crumbled under scrutiny. Social media, which had always been her shield and validation, now became a mirror of consequences. Every post she deleted, every apology she tried to post only added to the chaos. The audience that had once cheered her antics now observed her unraveling. I stayed offline and detached, allowing the digital consequences to unfold naturally. No messages, no public statements, no confrontations. This reinforced the lesson that attention-seeking behavior without accountability can escalate beyond control. By letting her face her peers, I preserved my dignity and avoided entanglement in the drama. Observing quietly, I noted the importance of personal boundaries in an era obsessed with validation. Even as the chaos peaked, I felt a strange serenity. Maya's frantic attempts to reconcile, calls, texts, tagging me in posts, went unanswered. Each attempt reinforced her loss of control and my newfound clarity. I realized that maintaining boundaries was not just necessary, it was empowering. She escalated, showing up at places she thought I would be, hoping to provoke a response. But each appearance only reminded me of the calm, deliberate path I had chosen. Her manipulative tactics, her attempts to guilt me or create spectacle, were ineffective against someone who refused to be baited. I reflected on our relationship, understanding that respect and accountability are earned, not demanded. Her reliance on social media validation had eroded our private trust. This was no longer about heartbreak. It was about maintaining integrity and refusing to compromise my values for someone incapable of reciprocating them. I continued to enforce boundaries with precision. Clara assisted with any necessary communication, while I focused on myself. Silence became my strategy, a demonstration of strength. By not reacting, I allowed her actions to reveal character, exposing flaws without my intervention. Respect, patience, and personal boundaries became my unspoken allies, guiding me through the storm. Gideon Harper, our property manager, stepped in with calm efficiency. He reviewed lease agreements, verified utility transfers, and made clear that my departure was legally smooth, structured, and final. I had anticipated every detail, but his presence added a layer of authority that Maya couldn't charm or manipulate. Maya realized that the digital chaos had real-world repercussions. Eviction notices, utility cancellations, and lease terms weren't Instagram filters she could edit. Her panic intensified as she faced the concrete consequences of impulsive behavior. The fantasy of social media dominance collided with the reality of structured accountability. Her attempts to plead, negotiate, or redirect attention fell flat. The rules were clear, and her popularity didn't change legal or practical obligations. I observed silently as Gideon guided her through logistics she had ignored, emphasizing that attention-seeking had tangible repercussions. I maintained detachment, letting the law and logistics handle enforcement. My preparation and foresight ensured a smooth transition, reinforcing the lesson that methodical, principled action shields one from chaos while preserving personal dignity. I didn't need confrontation, structure and rules did the work for me. The morning I stepped into my own condo, the quiet was almost dizzying. No Instagram polls, no frantic texts, no reminders of betrayal. Just the clean, empty space and the subtle hum of life on my own terms. Boxes still half unpacked, the faint smell of fresh paint lingering. I realized how heavy 3 years of shared routines had been, even the parts I thought I'd taken for granted. The apartment was mine now, literally and metaphorically. As I placed a book on the shelf, a book I had promised myself I'd finish when life finally slowed, I thought of Maya. The image of her scrolling through notifications, seeing my disappearance unfold, no longer controlling me or the narrative, sent a strange mix of relief and satisfaction through me. She had treated attention as currency, and suddenly, that currency was meaningless. Social media was her kingdom, but I no longer needed a throne in it. I began reconnecting with parts of my life I had put aside. Saturday morning runs became my therapy, jazz records filled the empty air, and cooking simple meals felt like reclaiming normalcy. And then there was Tessa Monroe. Her introduction was accidental, almost mundane. A neighbor, someone who noticed the moving boxes, offered to help carry a couch. Her warmth was subtle, unassuming, yet it stirred something in me, hope that connection could exist without spectacle, without drama, without games. I navigated this period intentionally, reflecting on lessons from the chaos. No impulsive rebound, no emotional overcorrection, just steady reconstruction of life. I set boundaries: work, hobbies, exercise, and social connection, all deliberately paced. Maya's absence and her social media meltdown became a backdrop, a reminder that stability and methodical care in personal decisions yield far more fulfillment than chasing attention or validation. The focus shifted inward, and every choice was aligned with long-term integrity rather than short-term satisfaction. Week by week, I created routines and documented small achievements. Financial independence previously shared was now fully mine. Meals were planned, taxes accounted for, even the couch arrangement had its own order. Social media occasionally pinged, but I ignored notifications. Tessa's laughter over coffee, the subtle brush of her hand as we unpacked, mattered more than likes, comments, or the echo of a poll gone viral. Reflection deepened. I realized how much emotional energy I had surrendered in our relationship, how much I had compromised patience for appeasement. That patience now returned to me, became a quiet but profound strength. I often revisited mental notes of Maya's behavior, the public spectacle of the poll, and the fallout that followed. Her choices, amplified online, contrasted sharply with the deliberate pace of my actions. I recognized that my methodical, measured approach didn't just prevent chaos, it built resilience. And while a new relationship might eventually emerge, it would be grounded in trust, respect, and authenticity, not impulsive thrill or public attention. Tessa's presence hinted at this possibility, a living reminder that life continues when boundaries are respected, and self-worth remains intact. Months later, I walked through the neighborhood where Maya and I once lived together. Familiar streets, familiar stores, yet nothing about it belonged to her anymore. I had a full sense of closure. Not the kind built on revenge or resentment, but the calm, quiet kind born from deliberate, rational decisions and measured detachment. Maya's social media presence had shifted dramatically. Followers dropped, brands ceased, collaborations, her curated life showing cracks. Mutual friends whispered online, and Miles Davenport occasionally tagged sarcastic comments, an ironic punctuation to her prior confidence. It wasn't joy I felt, it was recognition of reality finally catching up. Social media validation, so precious to her, could not compensate for poor decisions or broken trust. I reflected on our relationship in full. Every compromise I had made, every act of loyalty and emotional labor, now stood in sharp relief against the chaos of her impulsiveness. The public humiliation she suffered was unfortunate, yes, but it was also the natural consequence of actions performed without foresight, without respect, and without consideration for the people involved. I had been tested, and my response, methodical, patient, and principled, had transformed a deeply painful experience into empowerment. I maintained distance. Social media was no longer a battlefield but a backdrop, a tool to observe reality without engagement. Work, hobbies, and Tessa occupied my focus. I revisited personal boundaries, ensuring emotional and mental space remained intact. Even when Maya attempted reconciliation via texts, calls, and public mentions, I allowed her to confront the consequences herself. I had no obligation to fix her mistakes. My responsibility was to myself. In quiet moments I would review the digital footprints of our past, screenshots, comments, polls, but not with resentment. Instead, it became a guide for self-awareness, recognizing patterns, understanding the interplay between impulsivity and accountability, and internalizing lessons about emotional boundaries. Slowly, I began mentoring friends, advising them on personal integrity and caution with digital exposure. My experience became a story not of revenge but of empowerment through methodical restraint. Closure was not an event but a process. Every decision I made, from documenting our shared life to leaving without confrontation, had created a foundation for independence. Tessa's steady presence highlighted what was possible: companionship rooted in mutual respect, absence of drama, and aligned values. Watching Maya navigate the fallout without my interference reaffirmed a critical lesson: personal integrity cannot be measured in likes or comments. It is demonstrated quietly, consistently, and without need for public approval. Sitting on my balcony one evening, the city lights shimmering below, I thought about the lessons learned. Not the trivial ones about Instagram or polls, but the deeper ones: the power of patience, the importance of boundaries, and the quiet strength of deliberate action in the face of chaos. Life had tested me, publicly and privately, and I had emerged with clarity. Maya's attempts to reclaim attention had failed. Her brand had faltered, her social reach diminished, and the thrill of public spectacle gave way to accountability. I realized the story we had created, one she believed would boost her validation, had in fact been a mirror, reflecting the flaws of impulsivity. Meanwhile, I had cultivated self-reliance, emotional resilience, and the beginnings of authentic happiness. I recognized the contrast fully: her impulsiveness versus my deliberate choices. Every stage of my response, from silent observation to strategic withdrawal, had been intentional. The power of consequence, when allowed to operate naturally, outweighed any attempt at manipulation or spectacle. Integrity and self-respect, I understood, were far more enduring than digital approval. I focused on continued growth, personal projects, building financial stability, reconnecting with friends who valued authenticity. Tessa became part of this narrative, not a replacement but a symbol of possibility. Together, we explored activities grounded in reality, free from pretense, and reinforced the value of relationships rooted in mutual respect. Social media became a tool, not a validation mechanism. My strategy of restraint, reflection, and intentional engagement shaped a foundation that could withstand chaos and public scrutiny. Over weeks I reflected on every decision, documenting lessons learned. Respect cannot be demanded, it is earned. Boundaries, once ignored, must be enforced. Social media, a double-edged sword, magnifies both impulsivity and consequence. By allowing Maya's actions to play out without interference, I reinforced my agency and maintained control. This chapter of life had taught me how to act without reaction, how to plan without obsession, and how to rebuild without regret. As the evening deepened, I realized that empowerment comes not from drama, confrontation, or validation, but from intentionality. I had navigated betrayal, public embarrassment, and personal loss, and emerged with a clear understanding. Patience, strategic action, and moral clarity are far more powerful than attention or fleeting approval. Life had provided both trial and lesson, and I had learned them fully, quietly, and permanently.